Hi, I'm Johnny Brentwood, and we're here to review the Iron Maiden discography. Alright, coming in at 17 is their 2003 album Dance of Death. Now, I know this may surprise a lot of people, but I just didn't find this album as memorable compared to other albums. I mean, Rainmaker, Journeyman, No More Lies, those are standout tracks, but everything else just was not as memorable. Nothing really stood out to me. Alright, coming in at number 16 is The Final Frontier. Now, I actually prefer this over Dance of Death. I know that may sound blasphemous, but I just found this album to be more memorable. The only thing is the opening track, Satellite 15, it's dreadful. I mean, it just goes on forever. And finally, when it starts picking up, you just lose interest. But the last two tracks of the album are standouts. Alright, coming in at number 15 is The Book of Souls. I enjoyed this album because I found it to be a little experimental. You look at the tracks such as like The Empire of the Clouds and If Eternity Should Fail. I thought those were standout tracks. Apparently Dickinson actually wrote Empire of the Clouds. He started out playing the piano and then the rest of the band filled in everything. But I thought for a band that's been playing for X number of years, I mean, they're still carrying this energy. The classic Maiden sound still going on. I mean, I found it to be quite enjoyable. Another track that's really good is The Red and the Black. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Alright, coming in at number 14 is Virtual 11. This may surprise a lot of you, but I actually really enjoyed this album. I felt Blaze Bayley really handled the vocals on this album quite well. And this album's more closer to the classic Maiden sound compared to the X Factor, which isn't a bad thing. But this album does have flaws. I mean, you look at the Angel and the Gambler, that chorus, the "Don't you think I'm a savior, don't you think," it just goes on and on and on. And they could have done better. Actually, I'd go as far as to say that was probably their worst track, but this album does have a lot of standouts. You got Future Real, which I think is probably one of my favorite Maiden tracks, and then you got The Klansman. I mean, it's a classic. How could you go wrong? And I even love the artwork, too. I even have the Fabric poster that's been posted all online. If you do a quick search on Google, you could find it. But, you know, I think this album is grossly misunderstood, and it definitely should be given another listen. Okay, coming in at number 13 is Iron Maiden's Killers. So, a lot of you Maiden fans, I'm sure you could even rank this higher, but you know this is a classic unless you do not prefer Paul Di'Anno on vocals. But I find this album to be quite memorable. It's got standout tracks such as Another Life, Rothschild, Murders in the Root Morgue. I mean, the list goes on. And it's still got that punk rocking influence. So there is a lot going on this album, and I definitely recommend any Maiden fan to listen to this, or at least start out with the Paul Di'Anno and just move forward from there. Great album. Alright, coming at number 12 is Senjutsu. This is Maiden's most recent album release, and I gotta say, they're still kicking it. They're still doing great, still releasing amazing work. So such tracks as The Writings on the Wall and Lost in a Lost World are two of my favorite album tracks, and I don't see them slowing down anytime soon. And coming in at number 11 is Iron Maiden's self-titled album, Iron Maiden. There are standout tracks on this album: Prowler, Remember Tomorrow, Iron Maiden. This is the album that started it all. So I find this album to be much better than Killers. It's got this raw energy, and it almost sounds like you're sitting like in a castle courtyard when you're listening to it. I'm pretty sure that could be attributed to Paul Di'Anno's vocals and, you know, the different guitar players they had at the time, different members that came and went throughout the years. But this is the album that started it all. I highly recommend this, and I definitely prefer it over Killers. Check it out. Coming in at number 10 is A Matter of Life and Death.
Tell me what you can hear, and then tell me what you see.
Now, to me, I feel this album sounds like Brave New World Part 2. It's almost like taking B-sides and then throwing on this album. It's the lesser of two. And there are standout tracks on this album. And I do think people dismiss it because it's, it's after Dance of Death and Brave New World, and then people just kind of sleep on it. But the opening track, Different World, to me is a standout track. I mean, you even got other tracks such as The Pilgrim, The Longest Day, The Reincarnation of Benjamin Brieg. I mean, the list goes on and on. I love this album. I just can't rank it higher because I do prefer other Maiden albums to this album. Alright, coming in at number 9 is The Number of the Beast. Now, before everyone starts writing hate comments down in the comments section, allow me to explain, okay? So, everyone has their own preference for their rankings, and I love this album. I do. I just prefer other Maiden albums. This is the album that actually got me into Maiden. My father actually had a copy of this album, and he used to drum to it when I was growing up. And I mean, you got standout tracks as Invaders, Children of the Damned, Gangland, Run to the Hills, Hollow Be Thy Name. I'm actually looking at the artwork here. It's just, I love it. Even the front cover of the album is just, I love it. I just find other albums to be much better. Not a bad album by any means, but Maiden, in my opinion, produced better records to come. Alright, now some of you are going to be pissed. So, my number 8 ranking in the Maiden category is No Prayer for the Dying. I'm sure a lot of you right now are going to write even more hateful comments down in the comments section. I don't care. I know it may sound crazy to place this over The Number of the Beast, but I enjoyed this album. It's simplistic, and it has memorable guitar work. And I love Dickinson's voice on this album. Bring the Daughter to Your Slaughter, Tail Gunner. How could you go wrong? It's not bad, and the guitar work is phenomenal. Definitely check it out and give it another listen. Try not to judge it based on just the simplicity of it. Just definitely, please give it another listen. Alright, coming in at number 7 is Iron Maiden's Peace of Mind. This album used to be much higher on my list, but over the years I've been listening to their catalog, and there's other tracks on other albums that I prefer over this, but this was a tough call to make. I fucking love this album. I don't care if I demonetize myself by saying it, but this is a classic Maiden album. Die With Your Boots On, Where Eagles Dare, Still Life, come on. I mean, it's just, this is where, in my opinion, they were starting to come out and just really, every track is just, it's excellent. I mean, across the board with the songwriting and with the music writing. So I highly suggest this. I could see why this is in the top 3 for some people, but for me, I prefer other albums. Definitely a must listen, and don't hate me. Alright, coming in at number 6 is The X Factor. Bold, dark, brilliant. Please listen to this album. This is Blaze Bayley's first album with Iron Maiden. He took over vocal duties after Bruce Dickinson left the band, and I feel this is one of their strongest albums. The lyrical content is very dark. It must be due to the part that Steve Harris was going through a divorce. Not exactly sure, but I would definitely check it out if you are new to the Maiden catalog. Standout tracks: Lord of the Flies, Man on the Edge, Blood on the World's Hands, Fortunes of War. Actually, I would go as far as to say that Blood on the World's Hands is probably in my top 3 favorite Maiden songs of all time. And I also have it on CD, and I got a t-shirt. I love Blaze Bayley. I think he's misunderstood, but I understand why classic Maiden fans prefer Dickinson, because Dickinson's got the operatic vocal range. But he definitely is a great singer, and please check out this album. If you don't like this album, please give it another listen. All right, coming in at number 5 is Power Slave. Back in the day, this used to be my favorite Maiden album, and it took a long time to fold down, the album discography, but it was tough, and there's so many standout tracks on this. You got Aces High, Two Midnights to... My father and I, we used to listen to this album for hours. He was a Maiden fanatic, and what can I say? I mean, standout tracks: 2 Minutes to Midnight, Aces High, Power Slave, Back in the Village. To me, this album is just so energetic. It just makes you want to cock back your fist and hit someone right in the face if they're in your way. It's very energetic. I highly suggest every Maiden fan to listen to this album, every new Maiden fan that is, and give it a whirl, because you will be missing out if you don't listen to this album. All right, coming in at number 4 is Fear of the Dark. I love this album. It is so underrated. A lot of Maiden fans I come across, they always rank this a little lower, down in like their top 5, or sometimes even the top 15. It's always down there, and I'm puzzled. There's so many standout tracks. One of my favorite openings of all time is "Be Quick or Be Dead." It almost sounds like a machine gun, Be quick, be dead. It's just right in your face. More with that energy that I was talking about from Power Slave. All right, coming in at number 3 is Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. This album is a classic in my book, and I believe this is the first Maiden album that has keyboards on it. I'm not sure, but definitely standout tracks on this album are Can I Play With Madness, Moonchild, The Evil That Men Do. I love this album to death. I have listened to this so many times. When I was in Afghanistan, I listened to this. So many classic tracks. However, it's not in my top 2, and there's a reason for that, so you'll find out. All right, coming at number 2 is Somewhere in Time. I know some of you might have this probably as your number 1 pick, maybe in your top 3, to each their own. This album is incredible. I'm sure anyone who has listened to this album would agree with me on this. This is where not only were they energetic, but there was such passion on this record. Every track is a standout track. One of my favorite tracks by Maiden is Stranger in a Strange Land. You got that bass going on, and then the drums come in, and Dickinson comes in. It's just perfectly timed. This is such a great album. I'd probably rank this maybe in my top 20, maybe my top 10 favorite albums of all time. I highly recommend this album. Please, if you are new to Maiden, please listen to this album. I even have it on CD and vinyl. I don't go out and I buy digital, vinyl, or CD, or if I get all of them, it's generally because I truly love the album. But highly suggest listening to this. Standout tracks, once again, Heaven Can Wait, Stranger in a Strange Land, Caught Somewhere in Time, and Alexander the Great. That's another one a lot of people don't talk about. So I'm just looking at this artwork here. It's beautiful. So please check out this album. My number 1 album by Maiden is Brave New World. Not only is this my favorite Maiden album, but this is probably one of my favorite records of all time. I would go as far as to say it's in my top 5. In the year 2000, this album and At the Drive-In's Relationship of Command were tied for favorite album of that year. What can you say? I mean, when Dickinson returned to the band and he recorded this album with them, once again, it comes back to that energy. It's just they were ready to whoop ass, and they came out of the gates, and they did that. Every track is a standout track. The Wicker Man, the solo work alone on this album, the bass work, everything about this. I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. I remember I used to listen to this album with my father. My father was a huge metalhead, and when this album came out, he actually was not aware that they released a new album because he knew that Dickinson was out of the band. And when I brought this album to his attention, he went out, he bought it, he bought his own copy. And then he went out and he just played it on repeat over and over and over. And You know, I only knew a couple of chords on guitar, and sometimes I would jam out with him. It was pretty bad. But anyway, every track on this album, check it out. I don't know if this is in your top 3 or if it's your favorite Maiden album, but thank you for clicking on this video and listening to me rant and rave about some of these albums here, and I'll see you again soon.